I'm Pam B, and I'm an alcoholic. Amen. And my sobriety date is July 1st, 2000. And thank you for inviting me. And boy, this is a big meeting. So I'm a little nervous, but I was prayed up. And the ride here from Wilson, my sponsor came with me, my sponsee, and a really good friend in my home group. And we had a lot of fun the 2 hours just riding up here through a little bit of rainstorms, but we made it safe. So, and Alcoholics Anonymous has saved my life. And anytime anybody asks me to do something in AA, and it's hard to get behind the podium in front of a lot of people and tell all your stuff, you know, what got me here and what I'm like and, you know, what I'm like today. But I prayed really hard at home, and I thought, you know, if God's going to use me and use the bad stuff that happened in my life. You know, a lot of terrible things happen, but that bad stuff, what God does is He uses it to help other people. So to me, that's so amazing. And I have a home group, and like I said, I have a sponsor, and she has a sponsor, and it's the Primary Purpose Group in Wilson, and we meet on Monday night at 7 and Thursday night at 7. And Monday night, the first and third is a big book study out of the big book. The second, no, we only do one out of the big book, I think. But anyway, the second one we started doing about a year ago. We do a step study out of the 12 and 12, and that's been really exciting, you know, to get back into that book. The fourth Monday is a tradition, so whatever month it is, that's the tradition that we study. And if there's a fifth Monday, we have a history meeting, and that's a closed meeting. And then on Thursday, we have an open speaker meeting. And we also have a babysitter, which we hired from the church, which is really neat. So no parents have to miss a meeting. And she's been with us a long time, and the kids love her. So that's about my home group and my sponsor. Let's see, I born and raised in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. I've been living in North Carolina for 25 years, so I probably sound like a Southerner now. I love North Carolina. But Hazleton, Pennsylvania, by the mountains, the Poconos, Lancaster, Hershey Park, if anybody's familiar. And there's a lot of bars and a lot of mountains. In fact, when I moved here years ago when they had a phone book, and you would open a phone book in Pennsylvania and half the book was filled with bar rooms. You just open it up, bar room here, bar room there. Now here, when I came here and I had a phone book, half of it's filled with churches. And all different kind of churches, too. So that was pretty interesting. But before I could even walk or talk, my grandfather owned a bar. It was called Val's Bar. And I grew up around alcohol. I absolutely loved the chaos and the commotion, and just, I saw a lot of fun, you know, growing up with it, but I also saw a lot of tragedy. I come from a big family. Myself, my sister, my three brothers, my mom and dad, there's 7 of us, but in the household, it was huge. Aunt Lori was always over, Uncle Joe. And Uncle Joe, I like to talk about him. Everybody called him Kenny in the bars, but he was my Uncle Joe, but he looked just like Kenny Rogers. You know, hey, Kenny, how's it going? And he loved to drink. And my cousin Eddie, my cousin Ronnie, so there was constant people in our house. It wasn't just us. And half the neighborhood, too, because something was always going on at the Viloviches, all this trouble. But, and I would love to say, when I was little, I used to watch the Brady Bunch growing up. And I always thought, oh, I wish our family was like the Brady Bunch. We were nothing like the Brady Bunch. More like the Addams family. Or the Munsters. Chaos. A lot of excitement, but a lot of cops over, furniture thrown through windows, things broken. And we used to camp a lot. And Uncle Joe, he used to go through a lot of women. He never really keep a relationship. And a lot of younger women that he dated. And constant things going on. And I remember being at the campground once, and the cops always ended up showing up. But this one time he's with this woman, and they get into such a big fight, he threw her out of the camper, and she broke her ankle. You know, and she was trying to hit him with a chicken lamp or something. Oh, and the campground, the cops show up, was all this chaos. But he used to have a peg in his knee, so he couldn't bend his one leg. And there's a lot of hills and mountains in Pennsylvania, and we used to drink outside a lot. And I could remember we're all standing around, the keg drinking, having a good time, and all of a sudden you see something rolling down the hill. It was like a stick rolling. And I'm like, what is that? Oh, Uncle Joe. Drunk out of his mind, falling down the hill. And we'd had to grab him, and then what we did was we put him in front of the fire and we gave him a beer, because that's what we did. Then we're hanging out talking, all of a sudden something's on fire. And it's Uncle Joe. He fell in the fire. Oh my God. So what did we do? Patted him off, pulled him away from the fire, and gave him another beer. Because that's all we knew. That's what we did. We drank a lot. And one more Uncle Joe story. Every weekend, like a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, I think it was, we would meet at a restaurant and we'd go for breakfast. So Uncle Joe would be on a bender. And a lot of times he never remembered anything. He was a blackout drinker. And I was too, but I didn't know. When I blacked out, I thought, well, I guess it's normal. Uncle Joe never remembered anything. And I didn't know it was called a blackout until I came in AA. So anyway, he's sitting in the restaurant, and he has all these prong marks on his face and his arms. And we're like, Uncle Joe, what happened to you? He says, she forked me. She took a fork, we got in a fight, him and his girlfriend, and she forked him, tried to kill him with a fork. I thought, God. The Beloviches are going to be on 2020 next. I can see it now. Uncle Joe forked to death now. But anyway, I couldn't wait to drink. I could not wait to drink. I love seeing all that excitement. I had my first drink when I was 14 years old, and in Pennsylvania you had to be 21 to drink. And I remember we had this guy get us alcohol, and he bought a gallon of blackberry brandy. But anyway, we hid it in the woods, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's funny, as an alcoholic drinking, I can't wait for my next drink. I'm thinking about, does this restaurant serve alcohol? It's always on my mind. And before I even ever drank, that whole day at school, I kept thinking, oh, that's in the woods. I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's going to be so thrilling. But I hope those hunters don't find it. They're always in the woods all the time, looking around. Hope we hit it good enough. So anyway, I got home from school, did what we had to, and we took 2 cups. We didn't have ice or anything, and we just sat there, me and my cousin Ronnie, and we started drinking. And here's what happened, and I'll never forget it, because before I drank, a lot of people talk about fear, or they didn't feel like they fit in their own body, before drinking, and I was like that. I had a sister, and I love to talk about her. She was a year older than me, beautiful. Her name was Debbie. She was blonde, thin. She made a lot of A's. She studied all the time, right? She had a nice-looking boyfriend. She had a lot of friends. She was very popular. I was the second child. I was chubby. I had a big mouth. I loved to eat. I didn't make good grades. I hated school. I didn't really have any boyfriends because I didn't know how to treat anybody right. And I didn't have a lot of friends because I had such a big mouth. If you told me a secret, you wouldn't even make it to the bathroom. I couldn't wait to tell her. Guess what? I couldn't keep a secret. I was a big gossiper. And I always wanted to be her. And my first resentment was against God, because I was in this body and he gave her that body, and that wasn't fair. And then later on, what I remember when I came in AA and I had to write a lot of stuff down, well, guess what? Debbie exercised. I didn't. I overate. So she took care of her body, right? I never studied. So of course I got D's and F's, right? And C's, and she got A's and B's. She always had a book. She was always in the book studying. She had a lot of friends because she didn't tell their secrets. And she had boyfriends because she knew how to treat men, But when I had that first drink, here's what happened. I lost 20 pounds. Immediately. It's like, I am thin. I am pretty. I am smart. And the more I drank, the better I felt about myself. All that fear and anxiety that I had went away. And I became so full of me. I just loved it. And my cousin Ron, he had his own problems. But the more he drank, he'd flex. I couldn't see anything, right? But we were toasting to his muscles. So he had a problem about, his body. He just felt like he wasn't muscular enough. Well, I don't remember how I got home, so apparently I was in a blackout. And back then you didn't have Velcro. But I was stuck to the pillow the next morning. And I remember ripping my face off thinking, what is this? And I had thrown up, and I slept in it. Didn't get in trouble. My mom just made me clean the sheets and try not to do that again. Because everybody drank. The only two people in my whole household and our family and friends was my mother and my aunt. But what they were enablers, and I didn't know that. And what I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, they would clean up our messes so we would continue to drink. That's an enabler. It allows us to keep drinking. And that's what my mom did. And my father, a little bit about my family, he was like a Sybil drinker. All these personalities. And I was the same way, whatever mood I was in. If I'm in a good mood, I'll be all happy in the bar. If I'm in a bad mood, rah, I'll be screaming. And if I'm, frisky, I'll be very frisky. Whatever kind of mood I'm in. And my father was the same way. And I can remember, when we were kids, we were born and raised in the Catholic Church. And I remember how many nights, and I didn't know this till later, till I talked to my mom, but we would sit on the bed, all 5 kids, and we would say the rosary together, and we would pray. And I didn't realize that we were praying for my father to come home nice, or to even come home. Because my mom would be scared a lot, and I didn't know that. I saw some violence. I can remember one time, me and my sister holding hands in the hallway. We heard all this commotion, and it was so bad. I guess, we blocked things out. My mom was in the hospital for 3 days. That's how bad it was. So there were a lot of bad times. 3 of my brothers, well, let me tell you about my sister first. I graduated from high school in 1980, and I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, and I lived there with my aunt and uncle. And I got a phone call from my father. Now, my sister was at a party drinking, left the party 4 o'clock in the morning, hit a tree head on and died. So alcohol killed her. My 3 brothers, my one brother ended up spending time in prison. He did some time. And my other brother was constantly in and out of jail. In fact, I don't know how many DUIs. And he had a business that you had to have vehicles. But he kept losing his license, and my dad would enable him and give him money, and they'd get him out of jail and get him out of jail. Then one time he ended up in jail. He didn't have a license, but he was walking, and he got public drunkenness, and they locked him up. I thought, no breaks for Mark. He's always in trouble. And me and Michael just didn't get caught. But we did a lot of stuff. So it's a little bit about my family. And I ended up coming back to Pennsylvania. I lived in New Orleans for about a year. After my sister died, we came back. And what we did with that, I'll tell you what, it was very, very sad and very hard for the family, to bury your daughter. But nobody blamed alcohol. We were drunk. We were drunk out of our minds for the whole viewing, the funeral, everything. My mom and my aunt were the only ones who weren't. They were trying to keep everybody together, try to make it nice. And we would drink. And all I could hear was, we're going to sue that guy. We're going to go after that guy who had the party. He should have taken her keys. Nobody said alcohol killed her. She was drunk driving. We never talked about it. I remember getting mad at God, and I loved God. As a child, my mom would sit on the bed, not only the rosaries, but she'd read stories out of the Bible. And I loved all those exciting stories. And I was always grown up, not the hellfire God that people talk about. I never heard that. I always heard about a loving God. You can make a lot of mistakes. You read the Bible, they screw it up a lot, right? And God always forgave them. And that's the God I loved. But I remember being really mad at him for taking my sister away. I blamed God. Ended up, I met my first husband at a red light. I was drunk. I wasn't driving, but the girl I was with was drunk. She was driving drunk, and I'm in the car with her, and we're at a red light, and him and his buddy, and we just started talking, and we started dating. 2.5 years later, we got married. He is not an alcoholic, and I always like to talk about him from behind the podium, because he is the father of my 2 boys, and he is the best dad ever. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know where my children will be today. And I've got 2 great kids. One's going to be a minister, and the other one's still, we have a seat for him. If he ever shows up. He's a painter, a musician, who knows. He's a little wanderer, but he's a good kid. But, So he's a big guy, and he loved to drink. And what he was, and I didn't know it, he was an enabler. I would drink more than him, and he'd say, I don't understand how you could drink so much. You can drink me under the table. But he would clean up my mess and clean up my mess. We ended up getting married. We had 2 kids. And I kept drinking. I didn't know I was an alcoholic, and he didn't either. And what happened, I'll tell you a funny story. We went to a wedding. I mean, this is crazy stuff. And, of course, I have to drink before the wedding. In order to be in front of people, I've got to get that courage and that, ooh, I'm so beautiful, right? So I got to put the alcohol in me. When I look in the mirror, I like what I see, right? That's what alcohol would do for me. And so we go to this wedding. We're having a great time. Of course, I'm drinking, and he's watching me, being my babysitter. So he's sitting at the bar with my cousin Barbie, just talking. Well, I'm drunk. I'm on the dance floor dancing with somebody. I look over, and I see him talking to my cousin. I thought, oh, they're having an affair. I know it. I knew it all the time. These crazy thoughts we had, right? And, well, that poor wedding, I ruined that wedding. We had a big fight, a commotion. This is somebody else's day. They're getting married. And here's a drunk causing all this chaos. And I remember one time we were driving, and I could have swore he threw me out of the car while he was driving. He said, no, Pam, you jumped out while the car was going. Because I'd be crazy. I would just do this crazy stuff. And I will talk about the meatballs because Earl likes that story. I hate to cook. I still do. And he loved to eat. And he was a hunter and worse planner than me, but he would have a menu. Guys with a menu, I want meatloaf on this day and pierogies on Friday, and when I'm hunting it has to be spaghetti and meatball. I don't know. So anyway, I do the best I could. I didn't really know how to cook. I loved to drink. They didn't have cell phones back then, but the phones on the wall with the long cords, and I could walk around and talk and try to cook and put everything on high and drink, and the kids are little and just doing what I'm doing. So I'm making spaghetti and meatballs, and I'm trying to do the slow cooked meatballs. Well, I'm in a hurry. Right? I don't know how to slow them up. Oh my God, look what time it is. I better hurry up. And I'm drunk. And I look in the pot and I started stirring them. And you're not supposed to be doing them I'm almost mashing them like mashed potatoes. They ended up being meat sauce. There were no meatballs. I didn't know. I'm so drunk. And I'm home with the kids, drunk. He comes home from work, a hard day of work. And all he said, he doesn't know he's coming home to Sybil, right? And he looks in the pot and he's hungry and he puts up a spoon and there's no meatballs. And all he said was this, where are the meatballs? I flipped out. You want your meatballs? I'll give you your I slaved all day over this stove, right? I took the meatballs, a whole pot, opened the back door and threw them outside. I said, you want your meatballs? There's your meatballs. I'm sick and tired of this. I need a drink. And I'm already drunk, right? God love him. He put me to bed. The next morning I get up, I looked in the yard. He cleaned everything up. He's an enabler. He took care of me. The marriage didn't last. We tried to fill it with, and this is so true for me anyway, God's supposed to fill us, right? I believe that with all my heart and soul. But when you're not close to God and you're not seeking or searching God, you're seeking other things to fill it. And alcohol filled it. And in that marriage, alcohol wasn't enough to fill that marriage, right? We didn't communicate. I was drunk. He didn't know I was an alcoholic. He worked hard, and he bought me anything I wanted. Tried to fill it with a new home. Tried to fill it with a camper, go camping, right? Tried to fill it with the swimming pool. None of that worked. They didn't keep the marriage together because there's no communication. So we got divorced. I was in my 30s, and I thought, oh, this is great. I'm still young. I have arrived. And I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And we lived 3 blocks from each other. They're really close, so he could have the kids and I could have the kids. And I got the perfect job. I became a bartender. And I loved it. That was the best. I was like, this is it. I get paid to do what I love. Drink and talk about things and hear gossip and spread more gossip. And just all that stuff and chaos going on in the bar room. I loved it. And I was having a great time. I thought, well, I won't drink when I have the kids. When I have them, I'll be good and I won't drink. And I'll just drink when I don't have them. And we had pretty much split custody. Well, going on, having a great time. I didn't see anything wrong. I didn't realize I was that tornado going through people's lives. I'm having a great time. All of a sudden I get a phone call. It's my dad. And like I said, we have a big family, and we usually have family meetings. You know, you have a business meeting, and everybody has a voice and a vote. Well, that's the Loviches do too. You know, Uncle Joe has a voice, Cousin Ronnie has a voice, everybody has a voice. So my dad calls me and said, we're having a meeting at the house, you have to come over. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder who's in trouble. Probably Mark. He's always in trouble. And I have something to say. You know, I might have been mad at him about something. I couldn't wait to get there. I didn't think it was about me. I have a great life. I'm happy. I'm bartending. I have all these friends. I have the best job. So I get there, and all of a sudden, here's what I hear. 5th step stuff. Bad things. You know, if a newcomer doesn't know what a 5th step is, that's where you write down, well, 4th step, where you write down a lot of stuff about yourself, and then your 5th step is you tell your sponsor. Well, I'm sitting at the table, and I'm hearing Uncle Joe, because he's in the bars, he's hearing about my wild behavior. My brothers are in the bars about my wild behavior. And I'm hearing all this stuff. Some of it I believe because I could sort of remember. I'm a blackout drinker. I don't remember a lot. And some I'm like, no way, I would never do something like that. There were times so bad that I would do something so bad in a bar, it would make me cringe. And I thought, well, if I just stay away from this bar for 1 month, you know how you hide out for a month, but I'll go to these other bars, and people will forget by the time I come back. Well, apparently, there it is, all out on the table. People are talking about it, my family. Now, my mother being the enabler, what she did was she got in touch with Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said, you're going to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, your Aunt Lori's going to take you. And the reason she did that, she's an enabler, she didn't want my ex-husband to find out and take full custody of the children. And that's how bad it was. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never even heard of AA. My father pulled me aside and he said to me, Pamela, go to this AA and learn to drink like a lady. I could do that. That made a lot of sense to me, and I never really agreed with my father with anything. And I thought, okay. So me and my Aunt Lori went. And I'll tell you what, as I was walking through the doors here, thank you for the people who came up to me and introduced yourself and made me feel welcome. That means a lot. You know, the newcomers walk through those doors, they're scared to death. They don't want to be here. And we can't ignore them. We have to make people feel welcome. And I remember me and my Aunt Lori walked through the door, and it was Rachel from New York, Jersey Joe, and John Kay. And I'm talking 25 years sobriety, 18 years, 19 years. They're the old timers. And they made me feel welcome. And I walked in, and I had long, stringy blonde hair. I had 4-inch heels. I always wore high heels. Mini skirt, too much jewelry, too much makeup, too much me. You know, I'm a bartender. I'm like, wow, right? And I walk in. I remember Rachel said to me, Blondie, if you don't take the first drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, no wonder she's here for 18 years. Who gets drunk off the first drink? It's ridiculous. I'm not hanging out with her. Because I'm thinking it's like a class where they teach you. But she did say to me, buy a big book and a 12 and 12, and I did. I ended up staying in 4 meetings. The 4th meeting that was it for me. They're big on slogans up north. And it was one day at a time. Now, I'm a planner. I plan on Monday what I'm wearing Friday, what bar I'm going to, who's driving, right? I won't eat hardly all week so I can drink the whole weekend. I have to plan everything out. I was the type that went to fortune tellers. I don't now, but I used to. You know, am I ever going to meet that doctor? Am I going to Paris? Who's taking me, right? I even had my tea leaves read. I was always in the future. I was never in the past because I couldn't remember it, right? Or if I did, I didn't want to. So here we're at this meeting one day at a time. People are talking about staying in the day. That was so foreign to me. It made me mad. I said to my aunt, we're quitting this. I don't even like this place anymore. This is ridiculous. And she's there. Now, she's not an alcoholic. And she's there, oh, I wish I was an alcoholic. She loved the people. Which, you know, that's great. So I had to have a plan going home And coming up against the family, I had to have a plan of why I'm quitting this AA. And I wrote it out. I actually wrote on a piece of paper. I'll quit drinking. I believed I could. I'll quit bartending, because that's a problem when I get a real job. I'll go back to church, seek God. And I will start exercising more and eating better. Right? So it was a good list. I brought it to the family. We sat down with it. Everybody's like, Pam, that's wonderful. They agreed. 8 days later, I was drunk. I didn't know I couldn't stop drinking. 2 years later, my life spiraled out of control. And it was so bad. It was unbelievable. I was in the bars more than before when I was bartending. That's how bad it got. And my reputation was terrible. It was probably the talk of the whole town. And it was a mess. One little snap story on my mind here, too. I was thinking, I used to go out and I'd wear 4-inch heels and real short skirts. So we went out to the bar dancing. And that night, for some reason, I didn't take my heels. I grabbed flats. And if anybody doesn't know what they are, they're a shoe with a very teensy tiny heel. And for some reason, I grabbed them. I was probably half in the bag before I left. Right? So we go to the bar and we dance and we had a great time. Of course, the bar closes down at 2 o'clock, and a lot of us like to go out for breakfast. So I'm with this guy, we're in this big truck, and all of a sudden, here come the blue lights. So the cops get, and they immediately handcuffed him and put them back in the cruiser, and they look at me, and I said, I'm fine. I can drive his truck home. And they said, we don't think so. Get out of the truck. Now, back then, they didn't have breathalyzers. It was heel, toe, your arms out, maybe touch your nose. I don't know, all the things you had to do. And they said, you need to do that. And I thought, well, I could do this, right? So as I'm trying to do it, of course I'm stumbling. I can't. And I look down and I scream. And the cops said, what's wrong with you? And I said, they sawed my heels off. Somebody at the bar sawed them off. And they there, honey, get in the back of the cruiser. I actually thought somebody had a saw. I mean, that's how crazy and insane. I never got a DUI, but I should have. I did not end up in jail, but I should have. There was I just didn't get caught at a lot of things I did. And a little snapshot, I'm going to tell you this because I'm not sure how many years I've been saying it behind the podium, but for a long time I wouldn't because I was ashamed and embarrassed. And when you get prayed up, people pray you up before you get behind the podium, you're real nervous, and then all of a sudden God takes over. That's what happens in me. You never know what comes out, right? I think I was in Willow Springs, and I was speaking behind the podium, and all of a sudden this story came out of my mouth, and I couldn't bring it back. I was like, I can't believe I said that. But at the end of the meeting, so many people came up to me, and they understood. They understood. You guys understand me. So what happened was, I wanted to be a good mom. I would never want to hurt my children. I wanted not to drink when I had them. I wanted to do the best that I could, but I'm an alcoholic. And alcohol is more powerful than my desire to be a good mother, or a good wife, or a good neighbor, or a good friend. It's more powerful than that. And so I started drinking all the time. And it was a Wednesday night, and I'm drinking, and I have the kids, and I'm pretty drunk, and they're in bed for around 8:30. 5 and 7 years old, my 2 little boys are. And I look in the refrigerator, I don't have any more alcohol. And I thought, oh God, I need more. I got to have more before I go to bed. And I look in their bedroom, and they're sound asleep. And I thought, well, I was 1 block from the bar. I'm just going to walk to the bar, I'll get a 6-pack, and I'll come right back. That was my plan. Well, when I open the bar doors, the jukebox is playing, the people, just all that stuff that I love, all that chaos and commotion. Then all of a sudden you hear, hey, Pam, have a shot. Yay, have a beer. Ooh, I got a scoop. Oh, my God, I might need 2 shots for the scoop, right? My mind's going crazy. I just sat down. I'm having a really good time. I don't know what happened. I'm so drunk. My 7-year-old gets up in the middle of the night. He's looking in the house. He can't find me. In his little pajamas, he knows where his mother is. This is how sad it is. He walks 1 block to the bar. Walks in the bar, and I'm so drunk, I'm like, down on the bar like that, and I feel somebody's pulling on my arm. I look down, it's my 7-year-old, Michael. And he says to me, Mommy, come home. And I look around, I'm embarrassed. And all, most people are passed out or could care less, but me with my, it's all about me. Oh my God, people are going to see, what is my child doing? And I started yelling at him. And I said, how dare you embarrass me in front of my friends? I took him home, I gave him a licking. And that was not my bottom. That should have been a bottom. But I kept drinking. What was my bottom, I don't know. I woke up one day, I looked in the mirror, and I started to cry. I saw a woman that had no men in her life because I scared them off. I had hardly any friends. My family, now they're alcoholics. They drink a lot. They didn't want me around. Because anytime I showed up at a party, they had to babysit me. Because I never knew how it was going to be. They didn't want me around. My kids wanted to spend most of their time with their father. And I couldn't feel God inside of me anymore. I was too ashamed and embarrassed to pray. So I looked in a drawer, and I had those books that Rachel told me to buy. And I read step 1 out of the 12 and 12. I don't remember what it said, but there was enough power in that moment reading that chapter that I ended up going back to that same church, right? And here's the neatest thing when I talk about welcoming people. I was scared to death. I didn't even call the family, right? I just walked into that meeting, and when I opened that door, the comfort that I felt because, oh wow, that's Rachel, right? There's Jersey Joe. There's Mike K. They might not have remembered me, but I remembered them, and that gave me comfort. And of course, they came right up to me. How are you? Have some coffee. Here's a meeting schedule. They made me feel welcome. I would love to say that was my sobriety date. That was in 1996. That is not my sobriety date. And what happened, and I like to talk about this, Sandy says always keep it in your story, what not to do. Don't do what I did. Here's what I did. I got a sponsor in name only. People can relate to that when you just don't call your sponsor. But if somebody says, you have a sponsor? Oh yeah, Jill's my sponsor. But I don't call her. I don't do anything she says. I don't do anything. I didn't have a home group. I played AA like I played the bars. I loved the bars, and I loved going to this bar, that bar, what was going on. Same thing with AA. Go to this meeting, that meeting. Oh, I'd be outside smoking. I used to smoke at that time. Oh, is this a tradition meeting? I'd get there like 5 minutes before the meeting and have a cigarette. I'd say, what kind of meeting is this? Oh, traditions. Ew, I'm too cool for traditions, right? Ditch my cigarette. I'm out of here. I thought that was so cool. Then I'd go to another meeting. The thing was, it was fear. I didn't understand the traditions, so I was fearful of them. So I didn't do anything she told me, but she did say to me, she said, she was willing to walk me through the steps. She was willing for me to call her, to be part of my life, everything. But I wasn't willing to hear anything. But I remember she said to me, don't get in a relationship, at least for the first year. Don't quit your job because you have a good job. And don't move. And I'm, willing to help you with all that. And I realized today, the reason she said that was if I would get in a relationship right away, what's my focus on? The guy. And how do I look to the guy, right? And it's the only thing that's going to consume me. So I'm not going to be interested in the power of steps or having a relationship with God or getting sober. But here's what I thought. Oh no, I can't date for 1 year? I don't think so. That was on my mind, right? So anyway, I didn't listen to her. Ended up in Cunningham, and I walked through the doors, and I'll never forget it. And this guy's chair, and he had the key to the church. And I thought, he must be the CEO of AA. Wow. He's good looking. I zoom right in on him. And he didn't have a sponsor. He didn't work the steps. He didn't really do anything either. I didn't know anything about him. But let me tell you what. This is my experience. When I date somebody the first 6 months, I'm on my best behavior. Because I want you to like me. I don't want you to know the real me, right? Just put that facade on. And 4 months later, now I don't even have a year sober, I don't even know this guy, I call my sponsor, who I never talked to, and I said, guess what? I quit my job, I got married, and I'm moving to North Carolina. Good luck. She don't know. My experience. We load the kids up, a U-Haul, we end up in Goldsboro. And we lived there for a year. And it was the same thing. I got a sponsor in name only. I didn't work any steps. I didn't do anything. I married to this man I barely know. He was an entrepreneur. He sold stuff on eBay and flea markets. And then we ended up in Wilson. And then one day, now I'm a part-time dog groomer. I'm grooming dogs. And I come home from work, and it was funny. My first husband never knew when he opened the door what he was coming home to, right? Well, as they say, payback's whatever, right? I'm married to this man. I come home from work, and I don't even really know him, and he has an announcement. And he says, I have an announcement. I just want to let you know I'm going to start drinking again. I'm not really an alcoholic. And I said, well, I met you in AA. What do you mean you're not an alcoholic? He said, well, I'm actually a drug dealer. Oh my God. I don't even do drugs, and I married a dealer. I'm like, oh my God, right? So, okay. It got so bad. The kids moved back to Pennsylvania. He was drunk all the time. I'm sober, but I'm a dry drunk. I'm doing nothing. Nothing. I don't work any steps. I just don't drink. I have all these character defects that I don't know about because I've never done a fourth and fifth step, right? And I'm crazy. I come home from work another day. In the middle of the living room, all my furniture's gone. In the middle of the living room is a pool table. And where you put quarters in it. Right? And then all of a sudden, the big fluorescent lights with the Budweiser horses. He's shooting pool, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, drunk out of his mind. I'm screaming, where's my furniture? What did you do? What's going on? He looked at me and said, oh yeah, babe. Didn't I tell you? I'm a pool shark. I'm like, who are you? My God. I had no friends because he's real jealous and possessive, which I put myself in that position, right? I like to say this because tradition 7, we're self-supportive. And who pays the piper, right, who's paying the money, is the one in control. And I allowed this man to pay my car payment, to pay my child support, right, because I have these kids who went back to their father. Somebody's got to pay child support, to pay that Visa card because I love to shop, right? He's doing all that. So he is ruling the roost. And I can't really have any friends. So I'm a part-time dog groomer. I tell my problems to dogs. The lady who owned the place was 60 years old, and I was like a mess, coming home every day, and he's drunk and I'm not drinking. So I made a decision. I thought, okay. And I think we have to come to a point, we either move forward or we move backward. We can't stay the same long. I couldn't. And I thought, well, I think I'm going to drink, because AA doesn't work for me. Right? It's not working for me. But I'm not doing anything. Remember, I don't have a home group. I don't have a sponsor. I didn't work any steps. I'm not doing any service work. I'm not part of anything. So of course it's not going to work. So I get drunk. It's crazy. I bought a new dress. I thought it would be like really great, like it used to be a long, long time ago, is what I thought it would be. It wasn't. I got drunk, I blacked out, I passed out, and I threw up for 3 days. I was sick. And I remember laying in the bed, and he looked over at me with a beer in his hand. He said, oh, baby, you can't drink. You're an alcoholic. I was so jealous. I was jealous that he could drink, even though he can't, right? But he's there drinking. And I was mad. And this isn't fair. And I ended up in Walmart parking lot because I don't have any friends, right? And the dogs are sick of listening to me. And they're not giving me any answers, right? I remember calling my mom, too, sitting one day in the Walmart parking lot crying. She said, oh, my God, you're going through the change of life. You got to see a doctor. I'm like, Mom, I'm only 40. I don't think so, right? But anyway, so I'm in Walmart parking lot yet again crying. And I said, God, help me. That's all I said. And I hear a lot of people say that. That's such a tiny, tiny, short little, God help me. And there was so much power in that for me at that moment. My inner voice inside of me said, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know that wasn't me because I didn't like AA. It didn't work. And I thought, oh, that doesn't work. And I heard it again, Alcoholics Anonymous. So I ended up going back to AA. And here's what I did, and here's the power of God. I came back with an attitude of, I know you have to have a lot of sobriety to be liked, right? I had 4 years of nothing, but I wasn't willing to pick up a weight chip because I'm so self-centered, right? It's all about what you think of me, and if I pick up a weight chip, oh my God, you're going to talk about me, right? So I have to come in popular. This is how sick I was. And I wasn't going to tell anybody that I drank, and I thought, nobody knows it's a secret. He's so drunk, who's he going to tell? He doesn't have any friends, right? So I came in AA, and I got Sandy as my sponsor, and she said, are you willing to do, I wanted what she had, so am I willing to do the things she does? I'm like, I guess so, okay. And I think at that point I was. And it was a Saturday night, a Tuesday night, Friday night, and Saturday night meeting. And she said, you will come a half hour early, stay a half hour late, give out your number to newcomers, call me every day. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. Friday and Saturday? That's the whole weekend. Can we rotate? Every other? She said no. She was hardcore. She still is. But I needed that. I started doing everything she told me to do. And I'm still with this guy, right, my second husband. He's drunk every day drunk. And I'm doing this stuff, and my life's changed, and all of a sudden, I have the key to the church. I become secretary. I'm speaking at a lot of places. My life is changing. That wide road that I was on is getting more narrow and more narrow and more narrow. So one night I'm speaking in, and I'll finish up with this because this is real powerful. One night I'm speaking in Raleigh, and this girl, Sarah N. from AA, she picks me up with a van filled with men from the Flint home. And I thought, oh no, I have a real jealous husband. And I said to her, and he's drunk, passed out, but anyway, I get in the van, and I said, Sarah, if Jim asks, just say it's a van filled with women. It's a good lie, right? It's a good lie for me. She says, no, I won't. You need to talk to your sponsor. I'm like, oh my God, what do you want? That's ridiculous. That's a good lie. That's a save me. Well, I'm mad. Now, I'm the speaker. I have a major resentment. The only thing on my mind is myself, right? And what he's going to do. And he finds out, and blah, 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 blah. I get behind the podium. It's the worst talk I ever gave. At the end of the meeting, I barged over to my sponsor. I ran over and I said, Sarah won't, rah, rah, Sandy looked at me and she said, Pam, if you want God to dwell in you, and I wanted that more than anything, she said, you have to get honest. Wow. Whoever read How It Works, honesty is 3 times in one paragraph. We got to get honest for things to change. And that changed my life. Well, I went home and told him there were guys in the van, because that's the only thing I'm thinking about getting honest with, right? We had a major fight, but, I'm still here. He didn't kill me. And at the end of I'm trying to sleep thinking, okay, well, this is good. And when God's talking to you, my experience, he doesn't let you sleep. It's almost like a volcano wanting to erupt inside of you. And all I can hear is, what about your lie about drinking? Oh, no, I don't want to talk about that. And I could hear it again, trying to come up. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I tell them, all my friends in AA will know I'm nothing but a liar. I lied for 10 months. They'll fire me. They'll take the key. I'll lose my position. This is all going through my head, right? So I ended up going to my sponsor's house crying, and I told her the truth, and she was so excited. She gets the big book out, and she reads the part where cleaning up your side of the street. I didn't really understand that, but she said, get a pen and paper, and let's write down a list of everywhere you spoke. 5 places. And I thought, okay, what does this mean? I don't understand. She said, well, step 9. I said, yes, I'm not there. Why? She said, we, that was the key, we are going to go to all these groups, and you're going to make an amendment. Well, my mind's like, well, the same people won't be there, right? It doesn't matter. That changed my life, honestly and truly. I stayed with him for a while because fear of losing what I had. Fear of, oh my God, I could be locked up if I leave him. Who's going to pay my child support? I'm only making $7 an hour grooming dogs part-time. But all of a sudden what happened was I had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of that marriage. I was on the phone with my sponsor multiple times telling her about my marriage. She never said leave him. All she said was, you know what you need to do. And that one day on that phone, I said to her, Sandy, I'm ready. She said, are you ready? I said, I'm ready. Got on our hands and knees on the phone. We said the third step prayer together. And my life changed. I mean, totally changed. And those early days of sobriety were very, very hard, but I wouldn't change them for the world. She got me involved in prison work, heavy into service. I sponsor women today that actually want what I have. Nobody wanted what I had before. I have so many friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. My relationship with God is better than it's ever been because I invite Him in my life every day. My relationship with my children and my family and my life. I'm not the woman I used to be. And I'll close with this. I think when God puts me behind the podium, and it's always a hard thing to do to get up here and talk about yourself, but I have to be reminded of who I was like, what I was like. Because if I forget the way I was, if I stop doing what I'm doing today, I'll become her again. It won't happen overnight, but it'll be little tiny things. Missing a meeting, not calling my sponsor, telling the sponsor, I really don't have time for you, I'm too busy. Those little things. If I stop doing all the little things that I was taught to do in my life, my thinking will change. And I'll become that self-centered, materialistic, bossy. I can go on and on my character defects. But she will come back and she'll be glaring. And then I'll be in a bar. I know it. I'll be in a bar and I'll be drunk. And I don't know what I would do. So. But anyway, thank you again for having me and thank you for listening.